Okay, so I had a request to do something. One of the groups asked me if I do something on trees. So, although the theme is coastal landscapes, sometimes you get trees at the coast. So, this is a photograph of a painting I did about 4 or 5 years ago in Wales. So, and that's the photo of the scene. So I thought, well, this morning I did a little bit of something similar from that. I thought maybe I'll use this one, which is a slightly bigger image, just focusing on the trees and a bit of sand. So with watercolours, I always want to kind of get some sort of background colours first. So in this case, I would try and get some sky in and maybe some colour for the sand. And I'm going to ignore some of this, but maybe make all that sand and just trees in the distance and some sky. So if you're using watercolours, I find that I'm going to kind of go in with quite big washes to start with, and I've not pre-mixed any colours yet, so I'll just do the mixing on here. The sky is a bit bleached out in that one, so in the other one there's a little bit of colour in that one, so maybe I'll use some of the colour in that one. And just do some sort of sky impression. So a little bit of blue. I'm going to mix a little bit of red with it, so a little bit of crimson, just so it's not too overpowering blue. So it's ultramarine blue and a little bit of cerulean blue mixed in. And then going for, I like the bigger natural hair brushes are good for big washes. So something with a natural hair will hold lots of moisture. I find those quite useful. Add a little bit of water to that. Hopefully that won't wash it too much. So something, I don't think too regular, maybe leave a few little gaps for clouds, so some white there showing through. I'm going to make some of the colour a little bit stronger for places. So I'm going with a slightly darker mix as well. Trying to break it up a little bit. This is a bit too steep really for watercolour, so ideally one that's a very shallow angle. So that could be the sky. Clean the brush and just try and get rid of some of these drips. These bits at the bottom I can just mop that up with the brush. And then something with the sand colours. It's very tempting to just go straight for yellow for sand, but if I went straight for a yellow, I think it would be far too bright. Let's just wash that off. So this is a raw sienna, which is quite a nice colour, a bit like yellow ochre, quite an earthy yellow. So that would be it if it was just the yellow going on. But to me, this is more of a sort of pinky colour. So I'll add a little bit of crimson in with that. So that and the raw sienna. And a bit of water. That's a bit strong still. Just some more water. And maybe a little bit more red. So that would probably work as a wash. And the idea is to get a nice sort of flat wash on, or a nice varied wash. But what I don't want is paint drying out by the time I get to the other side. So that's where a big brush. Then if I wanted some slightly darker bits, I can then add some slightly stronger colour in there. Put a tiny bit of blue in as well. Just to vary that a little bit, just to break it up a bit. And at that stage I would want it to completely dry. So I'll leave that to dry. Some of these bits here, that's dry. Yeah, I'll leave that to dry now. So I've got another one here that I did this morning. This morning or earlier on. It's a little bit pale but that will be fine as a background for the next stage. So painting some trees in. What I found worked quite nicely this morning was just using like an oil painting brush. So I'll try that. There's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could go put some wet paint into wet area. So if I went through with I'll just do a little bit of both. So I'll do this bit down the bottom. If you wanted some sort of nice soft edges, dampen that area again, and then you could then go in with some sort of green. So I've got a green there which is far too bright. Just add a little bit of yellow and a tiny bit of red, because these cypress trees aren't that brighter green. So the red will dull it down a little bit, or sort of grey it down. And then I can get some sort of softer edges like that. I just want to make a strong mix. Something a little bit like that. And that could be left like that with just quite soft, the trees with quite soft edges, or I could let that dry and then put some darker paint over the top. Or alternatively, just go for wet paint on a dry surface. So I sort of do a little bit further up the top. So with the if I just use the watercolour brush, I do find sometimes the marks are a bit too sharp. That's just using a watercolour brush. Use it on its side, I can get more of a dry brush mark, which works quite nicely actually. Yeah, that works a bit better actually, because of doing that. So that not having too much paint on the brush at a time, and just almost like sort of grazing the surface of the paper, so it just captures the texture. So that could work quite well. The other thing I found was, again, just using this old, it's either an oil painting brush or a children's brush, something like that, you get a slightly more scratchy mark, which I think works quite nicely with this subject. Something like the fine punch needles. Just make it a little bit bluer at the edge, where you've got it's probably a camera effect, but it feels a bit bluer where the light is poking through. Going backwards in which that's running. Go back in with some darker areas too. It's got a bit too wet. So I'll probably get the foliage in first, and then for things like the twigs and branches, add those in afterwards. So it could be a bigger brush for the tree trunk. Yeah. Always good to get some sort of shadows at the bottom, and then work some shadows on the side of the tree trunk. A bit yellow on that side. And while that's still wet, that will paint will kind of mingle in. And can also any sort of twigs and branches. Quite like these really fine, thin brushes, the riggers for small twigs and branches, because there's not a danger of getting too thick a mark, so I can get some nice sort of twig effects with that. Any sort of smaller tree trunks in the distance. So yeah, quite nice. If you fancy trying watercolours, I think sometimes just a small section, simplish subject, don't go for too much at one time, and just really keep practicing and master the basic washes until you're confident to take on a complicated subject. Any questions? So, okay, right, okay, I'll come around and see how you're all doing.